Hey everyone, tonight we're stepping into a world of cherry blossoms, razor-sharp swords, and monks who wake up at 2 in the morning on purpose. We're talking about medieval Japan, and it was far more fascinating than most people realise. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Medieval Japan spans roughly from the 12th century to the 16th. 400 years that contains within it astonishing variation. Periods of relative peace, periods of almost constant war, the rise and fall of shogunates, and the slow accumulation of a culture so refined and particular that it would eventually become one of the most recognizable in the world. The land shapes everything. Japan is a country of mountains. More than 70% of the land is mountainous, and the flat arable land is precious and contested. Rice is the foundation of everything, the measure of wealth, the unit of taxation, the thing that every decision ultimately connects back to. A lord's power is measured in koku, the amount of rice his domain produces in a year. These seasons mark time in ways that are almost impossible to overstate. The cherry blossoms of spring that last only days, the summer heat, the autumn when the maples go red and gold and everyone who can afford to stops what they're doing and goes to look at them. The Buddhist concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of passing things, is not a poetic fancy. It is a way of experiencing the world that runs through medieval Japanese culture like a thread through fabric. Our 3 companions tonight are Kenji, a middle-ranking samurai in the service of a provincial lord. There is Hana, a merchant's wife in a castle town who manages her husband's accounts with a precision he relies on entirely. And there is Ryokan, an elderly Zen monk at a mountain temple who's been awake before dawn every morning for 50 years. Kenji wakes before the sun. He has done it every day since he was 7 years old when his training began. He sleeps on a futon on the floor of his room in the castle complex, its walls plain wood, a single scroll hanging in the Tokonoma alcove. The scroll is calligraphy, a single word, mu, nothingness. He looks at it every morning before he rises, and most mornings it means nothing to him, which he's decided is probably the point. The samurai are not simply soldiers. They are an administrative and military class whose identity is built on a complex framework of obligation, loyalty, martial skill, and aesthetic cultivation. The 2 swords the samurai carries, the long katana and the shorter wakizashi, are not merely weapons. They are objects of intense symbolic significance. A good blade takes months to make. The swordsmith is a craftsman of the highest order. A samurai's sword is an extension of his identity. To take it from him is to strip him of something essential. Kenji's morning begins with practice, every morning without exception. He goes to the training yard before the light comes and practices with the bokken, the wooden training sword, alone. The movements are so familiar they barely require thought. His body moves through them the way water moves downhill. This is the point. The samurai's martial skills must be available without thought, because thought takes time, and in a real encounter, time is what you do not have. The Sengoku period, the age of warring states, is a time when the country has fragmented into dozens of competing domains. It is an era that produces extraordinary men. Oda Nobunaga, whose ruthlessness and tactical brilliance will eventually bring most of Japan under a single authority. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who rose from peasant origins to become the most powerful man in Japan. Tokugawa Ieyasu, whose patience outlasted everyone else's ambition. But it's also an era of enormous suffering for ordinary people caught between these titanic ambitions. The Japanese castle is the centre of the medieval lord's world. The greatest Japanese castles are multi-tiered structures of wood and plaster and stone, their white walls rising from massive stone foundations, their distinctive curved roof lines stacked in tiers. Himeji Castle, which survives today essentially intact, gives a sense of what these structures were. The white plaster walls that give it the name the White Heron Castle, the complex of gates and corridors designed to confuse attackers, the keep rising above everything, visible for miles. Below the castle walls, the castle town, the Jokamachi, grows. This is Hana's world. The merchant class occupies an interesting position in medieval Japanese social theory. In Confucian thought, merchants are at the bottom of the hierarchy because they produce nothing themselves. In practice, in the castle towns of the Sengoku era, merchants are essential, and some are extremely wealthy. They supply the lord's household, finance wars, and feed armies. Hana's husband trades in silk and lacquerware. She manages everything in his absence. The accounts are her domain. She writes in a flowing hand, the ledger entries precise. Bolts of silk at this price, bought here, sold there. She knows to the bolt what they have in storage. She knows which clients pay promptly and which require reminders. She also knows, though she would never say it directly, that the business would not function without her. Ryokan has been at this mountain temple for 40 years. He came here at 20 and in 4 decades has left only twice, both times on pilgrimage. The temple is small, a main hall, a meditation hall, a kitchen, a garden. 6 monks, including himself. The abbot, who is 92 years old, and who has recently begun to express the opinion that death is taking its time, though not with any particular urgency. Zen Buddhism reaches Japan from China in the 12th and 13th centuries and finds in the samurai class an audience that is ready for it. The emphasis on direct experience over textual study, the value placed on discipline and present moment awareness, these resonate with warriors who live with the reality of death. Zen becomes the religion of the samurai class in the medieval period in a way that is more than nominal. Ryokan's day begins at 4 in the morning. The bell struck 3 times. He rises, washes his face with cold water, and goes to the meditation hall. The hall is dark. The monks settle into their positions on the meditation cushions facing the wall. An hour passes, sometimes more, in silence. For the first 20 years, Ryokan found this silence loud with his own thoughts. In the last 20, he has found it increasingly and satisfyingly empty. The tea ceremony, chado, the way of tea, is in the medieval period being shaped into the form that will define it for centuries. The tea room is deliberately small. The entrance is so low that every guest, regardless of rank, must bow to enter. The tea room is a space outside of hierarchy, where the lord and the peasant are temporarily equal in the presence of tea, fire, water, and the particular silence of the ceremony. The samurai class is not defined only by war. One of the things that most surprises people encountering medieval Japanese culture for the first time is the extent to which its warrior class was expected to be culturally accomplished. Poetry, calligraphy, the tea ceremony, flower arranging, ink painting. These are not peripheral activities for the medieval samurai. They are central to what it means to be a fully realized person. The practice of writing poetry is nearly universal among the educated samurai class. The ability to compose a poem quickly, in response to a scene or a situation, is a social skill as important as sword technique. A warrior who can write a death poem with genuine feeling and technical accomplishment in the moments before his own death has demonstrated a kind of mastery that transcends the merely military. Kenji is not a great poet. He knows this and has made peace with it. What he is good at is calligraphy. The writing of characters with a brush and ink is, like sword practice, a discipline of the whole body. The brush is held lightly, the breath controlled, the movement coming from the shoulder and the center of the body. A skilled calligrapher can be identified not just by the quality of the individual characters, but by the quality of the spaces between them, which are just as important as the marks. No theatre combines masked performance, music, chant, and movement into something unlike any other theatrical tradition. It is a contemplative art, designed to produce in the audience something like the state that meditation produces in the practitioner, a heightened, slightly suspended awareness in which ordinary categories of time and presence loosen. Hana attends a no performance at the castle 3 times a year. She watches and thinks unexpectedly about her father, who died when she was 12, and how she has never entirely finished grieving for him. What holds medieval Japanese culture together, across its enormous variation, is something that is hard to name precisely but recognizable when you encounter it. A willingness to accept impermanence not as a tragedy, but as the fundamental condition of existence. A belief that beauty and sadness are not opposed but intertwined. A practice of attention to the present moment, to the quality of what you are doing, to the way light falls at a particular hour on a particular surface. The cherry blossom is the most famous expression of this. The cherry blossom season lasts perhaps 2 weeks. The peak of the bloom lasts perhaps a week. The falling of the blossoms, which happens almost immediately after the peak, is not mourned but celebrated. If the blossoms lasted forever, they would not be what they are. Impermanence is not a defect, it is the point. Kenji understands this not as philosophy but as lived fact. He is 41 years old. He has lost 3 close friends in battle. He has a scar on his left forearm from a sword cut that took 6 months to fully heal. He's not afraid of death exactly, but he is aware of it as a real thing, a thing that is coming toward him at a pace that is not hurried, but is also not stopping. The concept of mushin, no mind, is central to both Zen practice and the martial arts. The state of mushin is one in which action happens without the interference of conscious deliberation. The swordsman in a state of mushin does not think about where to strike. The blade simply goes where it needs to go. Achieving this state consistently is the work of a lifetime. Kenji has experienced it in battle twice. Both times afterwards he felt something like grief that it was over. The Sengoku era ends with the systematic violence of unification. Oda Nobunaga, then Toyotomi Hideyoshi, then Tokugawa Ieyasu, the 3 great unifiers, whose personalities and methods are so different, they have been compared in a famous Japanese saying to 3 ways of dealing with a cuckoo that won't sing. Nobunaga: if it won't sing, kill it. Hideyoshi: if it won't sing, make it sing. Ieyasu: if it won't sing, wait until it does. What medieval Japan gave the world is harder to quantify than Roman roads or Greek philosophy. It gave a particular aesthetic sensibility that remains recognizable and influential. The beauty of imperfection, the value of emptiness, the idea that a cup with a crack in it may be more interesting than a perfect one. It gave Zen, which would eventually travel to the West and influence everything from psychotherapy to design philosophy, the Japanese garden, the tea bowl, the death poem written in the last moments of a life, the cherry blossom falling. These are not just Japanese things, they are human things, expressions of the awareness that beauty passes, that time moves in one direction, that the present moment is the only place where any of it is actually happening. Medieval Japan found particular and unforgettable ways to say this. The saying is still going on. It is late evening. Hana has finished her accounts, closed the ledger, set her brush across the inkstone. The numbers are right. They are always right when she's finished. She goes to check on her children, asleep on their futons. She blows out the lamp. Kenji is in the small room where he practices calligraphy. He prepares his ink. He picks up the brush. For a few minutes he does nothing, simply holds the brush and breathes. Then he begins. The character he writes tonight is the same one on the scroll in his room. Mu. Nothingness. He has written it 1,000 times. He will write it 1,000 more. Every time it is new. At the mountain temple, Ryokan walks the perimeter of the garden one last time in the dark. The pine tree is a black shape against a sky that has gone deep blue and is beginning to show its first stars. He can hear the sound of the small waterfall at the garden's northern edge. He's been listening to it for 40 years. It has never sounded exactly the same twice. He goes inside. He lies down and pulls the blanket around himself. Somewhere in the forest below the temple, a night bird calls once and then does not call again. The waterfall continues its sound. The stars move. This has been Midnight Chronicle. Sleep well, wherever in the world you are tonight.